Eamon Gilmore.
Last Cancor, I want to join my colleagues in complimenting Deputy Willie Penrose for tabling this motion, and I want to thank all of the members of the House who contributed to the debate. Minister McGuinness spoke just now about the need for confidence. Unfortunately, what he had to say doesn't give a great deal of cause for confidence in the government's handling of the problems that are now facing small businesses in this country. His description, for example, of the global economic problem, that it was about the United States government nationalising the banks, that it was a problem that the United States government were putting money into their economy, that the Chinese are doing something similar. That's not the problem, Minister. That's the sound of other governments solving the problem, something that is in scarce supply in this country. And if your only answer to small businesses tonight who are short of credit, who are worried about whether they can keep going into the end of the year and into the new year, is that the Enterprise Ireland mentor is at the end of the line, I'm afraid that's not much comfort either. It's not the mentor. It's not the mentor. It's not the mentor that small businesses are looking for now. It's money. It's credit. It's the means by which they can keep going for another period of time. And incidentally, the Minister yesterday evening, in responding to this motion, was also wrong, where he gave the impression that the EIB funds could not be used for working capital. In fact, they can be by way of a 2-year loan, which is very much at variance with what the Minister had to say yesterday. The Labour Party motion that we have before you is a call to action. All businesses weather the worst economic climate for a generation. Action to save jobs, jobs which our economy is hemorrhaging every week. There's a real crisis and it requires real practical solutions. While this government spent the last 2 months clapping themselves on the back for giving a blanket guarantee worth €500 billion to the banks, thousands of people have lost their jobs. Almost 12,000 added to the live register in the month of October alone. While this government was congratulating itself for its quick thinking in saving overstretched big property developers, hundreds of small businesses were going to the wall for want of modest credit from the bank. And it hasn't stopped since. The government is still congratulating itself on its response to our motion, response that commends the government for promoting, through the realisation of the objectives of the scheme, sustainable lending practices and the appropriate availability of credit for the enterprise sector of the economy. That's fantasy. Where are the facts? 100,000 people have joined the live register in the past 12 months. The sharpest rise in records began. Buried in that figure is the story of small businesses having to shut up shop in every community, every town and every city in Ireland. In the absence of official data from the central bank, the best available information comes from SME. In a recent survey, they found that 54% of companies surveyed had been refused applications for new finance and/or the extension of existing credit lines. These are not new companies, but businesses of long standing. Small businesses employ 1 in every 4 industrial workers and 1 in every 2 employees in the services sector. In all, almost 2/3 of the entire workforce is employed in a small business, the majority of which are Irish-owned. They are the backbone of our economy and they are feeling the strain. Feeling the strain because consumer confidence is low and nothing has been done to rally it. Feeling the strain because there is less money in people's pockets, so many households with so many households where someone has lost a job. But most of all, they are feeling the strain because the very banks which got a no questions asked bailout from this government are now withholding normal lines of credit. Big developers who can't pay the interest on their massive loans are having that interest rolled onto their debt. Is that what this government means by sustainable lending practices? If that is the case, where is the kind of appropriate availability of credit that will sustain our small businesses and save jobs? It seems to me that instead of saving our economy, the banks are strangling it. It is clear that the guarantee devised by this government gave them no power to influence what the banks did with it. They can request that the banks avail of the European Investment Bank's facility for long-term lending to SMEs, but they can't require them to. And, surprise, surprise, the banks have so far refused to access it. Now, I want to say to the government this evening that the likely consequences of any deal they strike with vulture capitalists currently circling our banks poses an enormous risk to our economy. Private equity is only being considered as an option because this government has lost its nerve. Why would Ireland consider private equity investment the ultimate in quick buck capitalism when governments elsewhere have refused to deal with them? A private equity deal might address the immediate problem. Doubtless, there would be another blizzard of spin about decisive action. But how is the Irish economy and the banking system to deliver the returns that private equity demands? How many jobs will be lost? How much value destroyed? What the Irish economy needs now is a long-term view. And how can the government be assured that the public interest, that of having a banking system that serves households and businesses, will not be squeezed out by the private interests of those private equity groups? And what of the effect on this country's reputation abroad? If you do this deal, how can any other Irish company raise money through the Irish Stock Exchange when the word is out that when the going got tough, you brought in private equity? We are in the middle of a national crisis. The rate at which jobs have been lost over the past 12 months is unprecedented, and there is evidence that it is getting worse. What we need is practical action now. Practical solutions that make a difference to small businesses which are on the brink of letting people go. The motion which the Labour Party has put before this House tonight calls on the government to do a number of very simple things which they are perfectly capable of doing and which, frankly, I don't understand why they have refused to accept. We want to establish a small business operational fund drawing on the €15 billion made available by the EIB for lending to small businesses. And if the banks won't access that fund, then the state itself should establish some mechanism by which small businesses can access that fund. We want to help the cash flow of small businesses by having all government departments and agencies settle their bills within 10 days instead of within 30 days, something indeed that the United Kingdom government has already decided to proceed with. We want the government to establish a monitoring group comprising of representatives of the government, SMEs and the banks to monitor the lending practices of financial institutions for the very simple reason that the banks are telling one thing to the organisations representing small businesses and doing the very opposite in practice, and there needs to be an independent mechanism by which their lending practices are reviewed. And we want to strengthen the role of the County Enterprise Board and to remove the cap on the number of jobs that can be created by them. These are modest proposals, Alas Ceann Comhairle. They're modest proposals that shouldn't be partisan in this House. But unfortunately, we're faced with a situation that we have a government which is blind to the problems that is now facing small businesses up and down this country. And instead of taking up these modest proposals and doing something with them, they've come in with a bland, self-congratulatory amendment to the motion that will do nothing to assist small businesses and, frankly, will do even less for the government's own credibility.